some directions than in others, and this manifestly proves inequality in the plain. At sea, a person's eye being 6 feet above the surface of the water, his horizon is 2 miles and 4/5 distant. In like manner, the more level the plain, the more nearly does the horizon approach within these narrow limits, and this, in my opinion, entirely destroys that grandeur which one would have imagined that a vast level plain would have possessed. October 1st. We started by moonlight, and arrived at the Rio Tercero by sunrise. The river is also called the Saladillo, and it deserves the name, for the water is brackish. I stayed here the greater part of the day, searching for fossil bones. Besides a perfect tooth of the Toxodon, and many scattered bones, I found 2 immense skeletons near each other, projecting in bold relief from the perpendicular cliff of the Parana. They were, however, so completely decayed, that I could only bring away small fragments of one of the great molar teeth, but these are sufficient to show that the remains belong to a mastodon, probably to the same species with that which formerly must have inhabited the Cordillera in Upper Peru in such great numbers. The men who took me in the canoe said that they had long known of these skeletons, and had often wondered how they had got there. The necessity of a theory being felt, they came to the conclusion that, like the Vizcacha, the mastodon was formerly a burrowing animal. In the evening we rowed another stage, and crossed the Monga, another brackish stream, bearing the dregs of the washings of the Pampas. October 2nd. We passed through Corinda, which, from the luxuriance of its gardens, was one of the prettiest villages I saw. From this point to Santa Fe the road is not very safe. The western side of the Parana northward ceases to be inhabited, and hence the Indians sometimes come down thus far and waylay travellers. The nature of the country also favours this, for instead of a grassy plain there is an open woodland, composed of low prickly mimosas. We passed some houses that had been ransacked and since deserted. We saw also a spectacle which my guides viewed with high satisfaction. It was the skeleton of an Indian, with the dried skin hanging on its bones, suspended to the branch of a tree. In the morning we arrived at Santa Fe. I was surprised to observe how great a change of climate a difference of only 3 degrees of latitude between this place and Buenos Ayres had caused. This was evident from the dress and complexion of the men, from the increased size of the umbu trees, the number of new cacti and other plants, and especially from the birds. In the course of an hour I remarked half a dozen birds, which I had never seen at Buenos Ayres. Considering that there is no natural boundary between the 2 places, and that the character of the country is nearly similar, the difference was much greater than I should have expected. October 3rd and 4th. I was confined for these 2 days to my bed by a headache. A good-natured old woman who attended me wished me to try many odd remedies. A common practice is to bind an orange leaf or a bit of black plaster to each temple, and a still more general plan is to split a bean into halves, moisten them, and place one on each temple where they will easily adhere. It is not thought proper ever to remove the beans or plaster, but to allow them to drop off, and sometimes, if a man with patches on his head is asked what is the matter, he will answer, "I had a headache the day before yesterday." Many of the remedies used by the people of the country are ludicrously strange, but too disgusting to be mentioned. One of the least nasty is to kill and cut open 2 puppies, and bind them on either side of a broken limb. Little hairless dogs are in great request to sleep at the feet of invalids. Santa Fe is a quiet little town, and is kept clean and in good order. The governor, Lopez, was a common soldier at the time of the Revolution, but has now been 17 years in power. This stability of government is owing to his tyrannical habits, for tyranny seems as yet better adapted to these countries than republicanism. The governor's favourite occupation is hunting Indians. A short time since he slaughtered 48, and sold the children at the rate of 3 or 4 pounds apiece. October 5th. We crossed the Parana to Santa Fe Bajada, a town on the opposite shore. The passage took some hours, as the river here consisted of a labyrinth of small streams, separated by low wooded islands. I had a letter of introduction to an old Catalonian Spaniard, who treated me with the most uncommon hospitality. The Bajada is the capital of Entre Rios. In 1825 the town contained 6,000 inhabitants, and the province 30,000, yet few as the inhabitants are, no province has suffered from more bloody and desperate revolutions. They boast here of representatives, ministers, a standing army, and governors, so it is no wonder that they have their revolutions. At some future day this must be one of the richest colonies of La Plata. The soil is varied and productive. and its most insular form gives it two grand lines of communication by the rivers Parana and Uruguay. I was delayed here 5 days, and employed myself in examining the geology of the surrounding country, which was very interesting. We here see at the bottom of the cliffs beds containing sharks' teeth and sea shells of extinct species, passing above into an indurated marl, and from that into the red clayey earth of the pampas, with its calcareous concretions and the bones of terrestrial quadrupeds. This vertical section clearly tells us of a large bay of pure salt water, gradually encroached on and at last converted into the bed of a muddy estuary, into which floating carcasses were swept. At Punta Gorda, in Banda Oriental, I found an alternation of the Pampean estuary deposit, with a limestone containing some of the same extinct seashells, and this shows either a change in the former currents, or more probably an oscillation of level in the bottom of the ancient estuary. Until recently, my reasons for considering the Pampean formation to be an estuary deposit were its general appearance, its position at the mouth of the existing great river the Plata, and the presence of so many bones of terrestrial quadrupeds. But now Professor Ehrenberg has had the kindness to examine for me a little of the red earth, taken from low down in the deposit, close to the skeletons of the mastodon, and he finds in it many infusoria, partly salt water and partly freshwater forms, with the latter rather preponderating, and therefore, as he remarks, the water must have been brackish. M. A. Dormigny found on the banks of the Parana, at the height of 100 feet, great beds of an estuary shell, now living 100 miles lower down nearer the sea, and I found similar shells at a less height on the banks of the Uruguay. This shows that just before the pampas was slowly elevated into dry land, the water covering it was brackish. Below Buenos Ayres there are upraised beds of seashells of existing species, which also proves that the period of elevation of the pampas was within the recent period. In the Pampean deposit at the Bajada, I found the osseous armour of a gigantic armadillo-like animal, the inside of which, when the earth was removed, was like a great cauldron. I also found teeth of the toxodon and mastodon, and one tooth of a horse, in the same stained and decayed state. This latter tooth greatly interested me, and I took scrupulous care in ascertaining that it had been embedded contemporaneously with the other remains, for I was not then aware that amongst the fossils from Bahia Blanca there was a horse's tooth hidden in the matrix. Nor was it then known with certainty that the remains of horses are common in North America. Footnote: I hardly need state here that there is good evidence against any horse living in America at the time of Columbus. Mr. Lyell has lately brought from the United States a tooth of a horse, and it is an interesting fact that Professor Owens could find in it no species, either fossil or recent, a slight but peculiar curvature characterizing it, until he thought of comparing it with my specimen found here. He has named this American horse Equus curvidens. Certainly it is a marvellous fact in the history of the Mammalia that in South America a native horse should have lived and disappeared, to be succeeded in after ages by the countless herds descended from the few introduced by the Spanish colonists. The existence in South America of a fossil horse, of the mastodon, possibly of an elephant, and of a hollow-horned ruminant, discovered by M. Lund and Clausen in the caves of Brazil, are highly interesting facts with respect to the geographical distribution of animals. At the present time, if we divide America, not by the Isthmus of Panama, but by the southern part of Mexico in latitude 20 degrees, where the great tableland presents an obstacle to the migration of species, by affecting the climate, and by forming, with the exception of some valleys and of a fringe of low land on the coast, a broad barrier, we shall then have the two zoological provinces of North and South America strongly contrasted with each other. Footnote: this is a geographical division followed by Lichtenstein, Swainson, Erickson, and Richardson. The section from Vera Cruz to Acapulco, given by Humboldt in the political essay on Kingdom of North Spain, will show how immense a barrier the Mexican tableland forms. Dr. Richardson, in his admirable report on the zoology of North America, read before the British Association, talking of the identification of a Mexican animal with the Cynotheres prehensilis, says, "We do not know with what propriety, but if correct, it is, if not a solitary instance, at least very nearly so, of a rodent animal being common to North and South America." Some few species alone have passed the barrier, and may be considered as wanderers from the south, such as the puma, opossum, kinkajou, and peccary. South America is characterized by possessing many peculiar gnawers, a family of monkeys, the llama, peccary, tapir, opossums, and especially several genera